Hi everyone, welcome to Nollywood Film Club podcast. I'm Mr. C of Roko Critic. How are you doing? Hope you're doing well. We have a special one, as the title probably indicates. There was no film club this Sunday or the Sunday that just passed. So we decided to bring you a blast from the past. This is a special one to celebrate episode 50. Wow, wow, wow. That's the celebration sound. We are going to be talking about one of my favorite movies of all time. I love this movie so much. And I actually had to listen to this one and honestly, I think this holds up as one of the good ones, one of the really good ones. It's very analytical, and that's thanks to the disagreement and pushback we had. I think there's a lot of discussion and actual analysis, which is very strange for Nollywood. But there we go. That's why I like this movie a lot. It's actually possible. I think you hear a couple of interpretations in this space, and you hear my voice a lot more than usual. That's two things, because one, I mean, technically, I'm also not just a host. I'm technically a member of Nollywood Film Club, but also this movie is my favorite film, and I have watched it a lot of times, and we have a review on our channel about it. I'm just very I'm well versed on it, so I had a lot to say because there was a lot of pushback to be done, and so I wasn't shy from bringing my opinions. But I still think what I said holds up. If you disagree, please let me know. I'm always, always, always down to talk about my faves. All right. That being said, I do hope you enjoy Nollywood Film Club in its infancy. Oh, one thing before that, you notice that there isn't a bad and then a pushback section, because I'm still figuring this out. It's still early on in the early on in the days, so I sort of mix the bad and the pushback. Um, but yes, nevertheless, I'm sure you'll enjoy Nollywood Film Club discussing the Lost Okoroshi.
I guess we have a sample, so let's kick it off. Can start with the good. Let me give Mel the opportunity to say the things she likes first about it before, and then we'll go into the bad, and then we can go into our disagreements.
Settle. I okay. The truth is, anime. It may sound unkind. I struggle to find things I liked about it. Really struggle. But the one thing I definitely knew without a doubt I really liked was the Okoroshi costume.
Okay.
I loved how vibrant the color was. I loved the pink and purple. I don't know, it's just so striking.
Mhm.
I thought it did what it needed to do, so I really enjoyed that. Oh, I liked Shion's casting.
Okay. Yeah.
I thought he did a very good job with what he was giving. What else do I like? These are the things that come to mind when I think about what I liked about it.
Okay.
Sometimes I liked the scoring, but I have many issues with that as well. So I'm not sure if I like it or not. So yeah.
Okay. All right. Atas, tell us what you liked.
Okay, I have a long list. I
Oh,
like the costuming. I guess if we can start there, but in general, I like the story. I don't think that I've ever seen a Nigerian movie approach masquerades from this angle before. I don't think so.
mm,
And so I like that it tries something new and, in my opinion, succeeds. I like the gradual build up even to the crux of the story. And I guess in general, I do enjoy this kind of like um, indie-esque, like indie movies. I think this would be kind of indie. And so the actor who plays the main actor, I don't know his name. I don't know that I've ever seen him in anything else, at least not in a memorable role. I thought he was cast. Right, I thought he was cast very well, and like he played the role very well.
Yeah. Do you remember what's the name of this TV show, Smart Money Women or whatever?
Oh, I blocked that thing out of my head.
Okay, right. Okay.
Yeah.
he's in that. I think. All right. Yes, he was in Smart Money Women. Like everybody apparently has blocked it.
He was Sean was in Smart Money Woman. He was
He was
the
one of
husband
the
who
the one that was
and stole her money.
he was taking advantage of his.
Oh yeah, now I remember him. Yeah. Oh, okay. I guess he cleaned up nice.
Oh my god.
But I will say that this movie is very, very Nigerian. Like the characters, the mannerisms, their speech is very authentic, I think.
Yes, agreed. All right, Vanessa, you can
about things about it. So I'm not. I for someone who wants a career in the arts and like has a career in the arts, I'm not a fan of artsy films. But this one I actually really enjoyed, and it was because of a combination of a lot of things. Like everyone has said, like the costuming was amazing, and it wasn't necessarily just with the masquerades. Even in like Chiwetel sitting in his singlet and his wrap, it just felt like the clothes were important to the telling of the story, as well as like the staging of it all, the location, his house, the 2 seats under the tree. My grandfather would sit under the tree from now to tomorrow. You know, it just felt very authentic, and it aided the telling of the story. It wasn't a distraction from the rest of it. Also, I really like the fact that every single person in the film shined, and it's hard to do that. Ozzy was in the film for barely how many minutes, and he shined.
Yeah.
So did the vice president guy. So did Chiwetel. So did the girl who was the Ashawo on the road.
Yes.
Everybody shined, and like it's something that Nollywood fails to do with their ensemble cast. They chuck everybody in there, and then everybody gets lost because there's no point. But even these characters who spoke barely 2 lines, they all shined, and it was great. And the dialogue, like everyone's saying, which is the thing I think artsy films throw me off about artsy films, is sometimes the dialogue just feels a little bit contrived, like they're putting it on. But even though the theme of this whole thing was everything was subliminal, it was artsy, the dialogue wasn't.
Yeah.
It was regular Nigerians just talking to each other.
Yeah.
And it felt really good to see it. Even Tope Tedela shine. Like Tope Tedela is great. But like even as like the professor who is giving us the goes back English and the big deal thing, he shined as that. And I've never seen Tope Tedela like that before in the film. And he did such a really good job playing the professor. Everything just worked right. But the film was short. It was short, and I praise God because I am tired. I am tired of 3-hour-long films that don't have anything. This film was short. It said what it wanted to say. It showed us what it needed to show us. If you didn't get the message, then that's on you. But like in their own head, though, they've done what they needed to do, and they did what they needed to do well in a short period of time, and they did amazing. And I agree, even though the beautiful purple and pink just shines, like, because everything else seemed a little dull. Like maybe that was intentional, so that the masquerade could be front and center, and it worked. It really, really worked. It's like I want more Nigerians to take this like artistic approach towards film while not losing the Nigerianness, which is what they did. Like in the little things like our speech and like the location. Those are the things it's that fine balance. That's what's going to make Nigerian art films different from like art films everywhere else. So, but yeah, that's it.
Absolutely.
And just Sean Ajayi was also in Ojukokoro.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. He's also in Ojukokoro. Yes. That's the other film. Rotimi, I don't know if you want to come up, but like I know, like you, I don't know if you've seen Lost Okoroshi, but yeah, it would be good to hear your thoughts. Yeah. Okay. For us. Oh my goodness. Do you want to go first, Miss C? I've just watched it again. Like this movie is.
I haven't had a chance to rewatch.
Because you don't rate this work. So do you want to say your own?
Yeah, so okay. But I think the things I want to talk about have been touched on by everyone, really. Like the costume for starters, and talking about how the costume fits in or is essential, right, to the film. The bit I always remember is her night dress. When he just became the masquerade, or when she finds out he's the masquerade, rather, she's got this just kind of old night dress that's kind of frayed. You can see some threads just sticking out of the neckline. And no one's commenting on it or anything. It just fits it. It's just like, yeah, that's the night dress she would be wearing. And like Vanessa that just said about the Nigerianness of the film, we lose these things. You're right. We lose the Nigerianness in our dialogue. So I'm thinking of like the setup, a film like the setup, right? Like when we complained about it being like trying to do it's like just taking Hollywood and just not adapting it properly for us. Is we lose our Nigerianness in our dialogue, but it's there. Right, even the professor that is speaking the English sounds Nigerian. Right, that is what I believe a Nigerian professor would sound like. It's not foreign, it's not weird, it just is what it is. Sheon Ajayi, so slept on. I mean, we've seen him in stuff obviously, but like he has been slept on. We see him in more stuff. He's really good, absolutely fantastic. But yeah, it was really good, and I really liked that approach to it because and it was like we liked Juju stories as well. Although they weren't always like positive depictions of jazz, frankly. But it's the demonization of the culture, right? It's just it's never it's almost never positive in our films, right? And this was just a thing, and it was really interesting. It was very different, and difference not always good. Right, you can't just it's a new story, we'll give you a pass. So we're giving passes for new stories for a while, and then we're like, nah, fuck it, we can't keep giving like, all right, we've given enough new story passes, so people are doing new stuff, they're not always good. This was good, this was interesting, this was engaging from the beginning to the end. I wasn't like wrap it up. So Hall of Fame.
These are solid points. I remember the first time I watched Lost Okoroshi, I enjoyed it on a much more surface level. I just enjoyed this sort of guy who turned into a masquerade and going through the city and the interesting adventure that he goes on and what comes of it. And then also the way it pans out. There are going to be spoilers, so sorry if you haven't seen the Lost Okoroshi, please beware. I will spoil it. I'm about to spoil it. So it's this adventure that the Okoroshi goes on and the first time. And I remember going, oh my God, that was really fun. That's a fun watch. That I watched this thing where the main character doesn't have lines for a long part of it, and you still feel invested in his journey. You still feel invested in him. And when the end comes, you feel sad because of the journey you've been through with Raymond. It's like there are so many. In fact, I guess it's because some of our protagonists in other films, they talk too much and they talk nonsense, and you're like, shut. Anything that wants to happen to you should happen to you. You're a bad person. Like a lot of our protagonists in different films, they end up doing stupid things, very uncharacteristically stupid things. And I know, occasion is to meet for particular plot points to happen. So it was amazing to watch. I saw that in the first time, and that was what I watched. I saw it the second time, and I got a completely different thing. The whole thing about why the Okoroshi came into being, and this this tussling between the physical and the spiritual, and how they are both like uh, how they are how they both
how the physical distorts the spiritual.
distorts the spiritual, and they both feed into each other. That's what he's saying anyway. I actually heard what he was trying to say on the second watch. And on the third watch, I just keep on seeing new things. Like even in the third watch, like there's something about like man's this the way once they spotted the Okoroshi, when like all like I would say mankind or humankind, person kind, when we spot then they spot the Okoroshi, everybody just wants to like, how can we use this guy for our benefit?
Yes.
The prostitute is like, how can I use this man so he'll give me money? Because like, the guy, gave her money the first time. And the little guy wants to dance around and make money with him. The guy in the club wants to put him in the video. If sure guys want to just like, nobody cares about like what the guy is actually doing. Everybody just wants to use him, and like it just reminds me of it reminded me so much about like art in general, but I don't want to go too long into that. But like there's so many levels on which this thing can be enjoyed. There's so many levels in which it can be enjoyed, and the way it's shot, it has a personality. I know there's a lot of it being low budget allowed it to go certain places where I don't think any other like if you had a high budget, some things would have needed to be a lot cleaner. Like there's a couple of jump cuts like in the middle of scenes, and some of them work really well because like it's just like passing of time, and it feels stylized. Whereas sometimes it feels a little more clunky. But I haven't gone into the bad yet. In fact, I've spoken enough. Any in the future, maybe when Mel raises a point, I might raise a point about more good stuff. Anyway, but yeah, that's it for me on the good. Um, all right, let's go on into the bad, I guess. What did we not like? And we can start with Mel.
Oh, I don't know if my thoughts are gathered enough for this. Okay. I did not like the jump cuts.
The jump cut.
No, I did not. I've seen films where they're used as part of the style and they work really well. I did not think that it worked. I thought it was a bit distracting for me personally. I did not like the jump cuts. I think just in general, the way that I would describe my experience of the film is I did not understand. And not because the topic it dealt with is a particularly difficult topic to understand, but because the approach felt frustrating for me. And that's what it is. Like when I think about it, I have too many questions when the movie should have been all the answers I needed. So for instance, what was maybe the point? I don't know if that's the right word, but what was the point? Because when you're listening to the exposition, another thing I did not like the exposition. When you're listening to the exposition, it talks about the disconnect, that's the word, the disconnect between the physical and the spiritual, which is like a valid topic on its own. But when the story is unfolding, the story is telling you that it's about this tension between the tradition and modernity, and it's like those are two different things. So what exactly are we talking about? And it felt frustrating because it felt like it felt like I never got any answers for any of the points that were raised. The sex worker is doing this during her dialogue, and she says, "Do you know Don E? Who the fuck is Don E?" Never comes up again. I'm just I think it's a movie with a lot of Easter eggs, but I would just have preferred a movie that told like a story that felt consistent and cohesive. I did not have a story. What is the story? I didn't have. It felt like there were all these different things happening, and this is why I was sad when the masquerade died. I was sad because their journey felt distracted by all these other people's story, and I'm not sure what the point was. Um, I guess this is a good place to stop. But I think the words for it was it felt distracted. It felt frustrating for me personally. Who is the professor's character? What was the first scene that we meet the professor in? He's talking to somebody. And then this person says to you, my wife and her family are after me, and you're like, oh yeah, let me make a joke about jerking off. Are you kidding me? So what was that? Because at first I thought it was like a therapy session, but it's not, because he's a professor, not a therapist. So what was that? And why is this not a thing that we ever approach properly? Then after that, the professor sits down to play recordings. What is the professor doing? I don't know what the professor is doing. But then he doesn't also play the recordings in a way that makes a coherent argument. And I think that this is where I started to feel disconnected from the story or whatever the story was. Because then what I was thinking was, what are you hiding? What are you afraid of? What are you worried about that you cannot make the argument that you want to make here? Why are we hearing all this broken things that together they're not telling me anything? They're confusing me. I don't know. It felt distracted. It felt frustrating. The scenes that I didn't like, the scenes that the exposition. I thought it could have done without the exposition. I thought that the characters and especially just the spirit of the masquerade had so much life that the story could have been told, with them rather than like with exposition. It felt like what people were saying in the dialogue, I wasn't seeing it in the film. So that also felt very disconnected for me. I can stop here and then like talk more later. I don't want to talk this night.
That's perfect. Uh, I don't. I actually feel like I generally have answers for all of the questions you raised, but I do want to give the chance to other people, a task or you know what? We'll come back to how do we want to do this? Okay, Oyinkan's just came on. Maybe you know what, Oyinkas, we'll come to you in a bit. We'll come to you in a bit because like there are some questions and I don't want this theme to fall. Vanessa or Tass, do you guys, any of you guys want to take it, or do you want me to? I can go straight in.
I think you should go.
Okay. All right. Okay. So, Mel, they're quite. I mean, I can. Oh, oops. Oh, all right. There are quite a few things that you mentioned. Okay, so I'll take them as I remember them. I remember the thing about the professor, and you said the jerking off thing. So he was saying intellectually jerking off, like not actually jerking off, like
It's
you know.
still a very inappropriate thing to say. It really, especially in a professional setting. I could say something was like, I would look at like pictures or images or whatever, and the way that I would appreciate them would say, "Oh, that looks sexy," but I can't see that in a professional setting. Which is why I don't understand what his relationship with that person was. But it still felt inappropriate to say. But also because it was so dismissive of the person's concerns. It's just like, oh, my wife's people are after me. I'm going to die. It's like, oh yeah,
But
I
that's his
don't
arc.
want to jerk off.
But that's his arc. He starts off as sort of suspicious and skeptical about the spiritual, and his arc.
No, he doesn't. No, he doesn't. This is
But
his
that,
work. This is his life's work. He spent his entire, I don't know what his life has been like, but he spent his entire professional life just looking for and the books on his table tell you that. Another thing I didn't like.
okay.
Finds,
Hang on. Wait.
okay,
I just want to establish.
sorry.
I just want to establish this part. he does start off as, I mean, like, that's what that scene is. That scene is telling you that he's skeptical about the spiritual, right? Like, that's how he starts. I mean, there's no, yeah, he's the, huh?
He's not uninterested.
Yeah, he's not uninterested. He's not there. Like, you can be studying things for a long time, and not not buy into it. Like a bunch of people who love, like, I don't know if you've seen, they love, like, atheist debaters, and they're like very thorough in theology. They like have to be in order to debate it. It's like, so something being your life's work doesn't even mean that you believe in it anyway. So that's the point. The point is that he starts off skeptical, and that's how, I mean, like, he has an arc, and that's what they're doing. I remember, and I'm not even like, it's not like I'm making this up on the spot. In our review, when we do our review, I mentioned that this is the arc that he goes through. But yeah, that's for that. Uh, I can't speak to jump cuts. Like, well, yeah, I said to you, like, that the jump cuts sometimes, I think they work sometimes. I can understand why they would rub somebody else the wrong way. As for the point of the movie, I mean, the movie is very layered. I don't know how else. I guess on the simplest terms, what is happening? It's basically the origin of our masquerade. It's the origin of, like, a of the if you think of it as a superhero story, and they do this at one point, right? They go, the difference between Shango and Thor is packaging. There's a little meme in there, and that's basically this. This is our own technically superhero origin movie of how the Okoroshi comes in. That's the on the surface level. That's it. That's the movie you're going to see. How Raymond becomes the Okoroshi, and how the Okoroshi goes through life in Lagos, and what happens to him, the adventure he goes on, right? Obviously, there's a bigger universe outside of that, but yeah, that's the general point of the film on the surface level.
So, I'm gonna jump in real quick.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I don't think that the movie itself, so I can see why the movie is confusing, or how it comes off confusing, and that's really my own critique as well, when I list my negatives. However, I feel like the reason it leaves you with more questions rather than answer is because that's the point, right? It doesn't feel like the movie is trying to answer a question. It feels like the movie is either making a commentary or asking us to examine our own interactions with, like, Nigerian religion, more or less, or traditional religion. And that's what I get from it. Really isn't, like, I can see how it's confusing. Like, a lot of the movie doesn't explain itself. It just expects you to know certain things, I guess, or understand certain things. And that can be convoluted. But yeah, that, like, for me, it's a commentary on traditional religion in, like, modern Nigeria right now, and how we interact with traditions, either for our own benefit, like the prostitute trying to use it for her benefit, and just in general. Even at the end, his death seems just kind of symbolic to how traditional practice has died now. But that's me and my convoluted movie. So
Yeah. No, I get what you're saying there, and I think there's certainly a lot of commentary on there. There is a lot. There's a lot of things it touches, but I think it does try to say something. I think for me, it seems like what it tries to say is it's kind of clear. I don't know if there are other things. Maybe there are other things I'm not thinking of. Like, it's at the beginning, like, Chiwetel Ejiofor is complaining about how his leg is not healing like that he would do back in the days, because, like, the world is corrupt now. Like, people are doing a bunch of terrible. People are raping and stealing and killing and just being bad blokes, and it's corrupting the stuff. and 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 that's why things aren't working. And you see the Lost Okoroshi, like actually just before he almost like is giving up hope. Well, just before he gets murdered, actually, he he's walking around as like there's litter everywhere. There's dustbin. The person who he had some faith in and had rescued and gave a gift to was I guess bringing another gift because he thought, oh, okay, like she's wearing those masquerade earrings, like she must get it, right? Um, and she's a prostitute. She's like and she's fucking by the roadside, which is fine to be honest. But the Okoroshi's not into that. Okoroshi's not into that. So he's dismayed by all of this, and it's just basically like the setup is that I don't like. I've seen this 3 times now. Oh no, not 3 times. I've seen this more than 3 times. But every time I see this, like there are loads of lines of dialogue that you think might be just thrown away, but almost everything like is either foreshadowed or like is necessary. They like come to play back later in there's a payoff for almost every line. We'll go Mel and then Oyinkant. Mel, go on.
Do you okay, let me gather my thoughts. So let Oinkan go first and then I gather my thoughts. If that's okay.
Go on, Oyinkant.
Okay, so because I came in late, I don't know what everybody's really talking about. So I was apologies for that. I guess this is where I guess you can say this movie is actually quite good and very thoughtful because it has very different interpretations and people actually are not as frustrated with it. Well, yeah, Mel seems so frustrated with it, but not that simply. Just you have your interpretations of it. Um, I liked the movie, a lot because one, it didn't pull in my leg. It does have a sort of story in it, and it's quite Nigerian, and it's not. It's also one of the things I appreciate about this movie is like, it's not. There's not an insult to old Nollywood, and there's not an insult to Nigerianness, and there's not a sort of like, oh, I can do it better or something like that of like more newer movies that are just like that they went to film school and there's an insult that they are giving and they disrespect that it's just like get out of here and your story is bad. Um that's just a global something I'm just gonna put down there. I see this movie, The Lost Okoroshi. Yes, I can see what Mel is talking about, like with the professor's character. Like I am very confused. Are you a psychologist or are you just a professor? What are you but like there's a better way they can put if they wanted to say did he give him a hack of not believing, there's a better way of making him like is he an historical anthropological professor or is he like a psychologist? It's very different. So there's a better way of actually doing that. But hey, people make mistakes in movies. That's what I think. But I see it more as the city can also represent not just what's it called, modernism and all that stuff, but it can also represent neoliberalism. It can also represent um the results of colonization because that's what the city can represent. And I see that Ross Okoroshi, it's not at the end when he was losing. Remember, they already told us that like Chiwete Ago's character already said that the spirits are not as strong as they are before anyway because of the pollution, the city, and all that corruption and all that. Like, I kind of see, and also the city can also represent the infestation of capitalism and like pushing where some people just win and just the rest of everybody loses, right? And there is no care. There is no care. It's not just only like this movie is not only just talking about like just Nigerian traditionalism because the pictures at the end, right? Those masquerades are not just Nigerian masquerades. Their masquerades are not even from Africa. Those masquerades are from mainly Asia and Western Europe because most people don't realize that okay, Europe also had like very, very traditional things too. The gauze and all that stuff, those things have been pushed aside because of all these things. But it's a very global movie that is talking about like the traditional ways, and by the traditional ways it means like the community and all that stuff, things that are not being cannibalized. Well, they have been cannibalized, things that have been cannibalized by like capitalism and the whole way of the global system. Maybe that's how I am interpreting it, because also he put the pictures at the end and not from Africa. They're not African masquerades. Not most of them are not African masquerades. They're masquerades from other places of the world. So that's why I feel like, oh, maybe it's actually more global that is trying to talk about. And at the end, where we see the Lost Okoroshi with that with the prostitute, one thing about this movie is like it's not necessarily judging the prostitute, because hey, she's doing what she has to do to survive, and at the end that you see that like there is no way to, she cannot, despite the works of the efforts of the Okoroshi, she cannot get out of the prostitution. Okay, you give her $1,000, you give her sorry, 1,000 naira or 2,000 naira. How many days does that last for? How long does that last for? She cannot, is despite his work, she cannot get out of prostitution, because the Lost Okoroshis, and you see him walk throughout the pollution and all those things. Those are effects of city living, and city living in Lagos is effects of capitalism and neoliberalism, all those things, right? It pollutes the land. Also, we are not connected to our ancestrals, to our cultures, to the things. It makes us it. That's the thing. It individualizes us. It atomizes the individual, right? It reduces you from your community, because now everything is individualism, all this thing. It reduces you from your community, from the past, from the things that gives you all those culture. It reduces you from being a human being, because under it, you're not a human being. You are your money. You're a commodity. And so that's the thing of, and true is seeing all that, and because of all that, and you even see it in the end. Who kills him? That dude that kills him, right? The dude is a thief. It's not just only he's a thief. He has these markings of like, okay, it seems like it's an African marking. It seems like it's like a traditional charm marking, but when you read it, it has nothing to do with being traditional. But it's written in English. It's drawing a skull, which is not really like, not really like institutionally local, right? And he's a thief because he also has to find ways to survive. He's a local guy. He's not. He also has to find ways to survive. It's the way he's atomized. He kills the guy. He kills the Lost Okoroshi, because the Lost Okoroshi sees the rot of things, right? And I feel like that's how the Lost Okoroshi loses his power, because like we are disconnected because of these things. I say capitalism because ultimately it's also the way you interpret it. Every other people's interpretation can also be right, but that's also the way I kind of interpret it too. I I liked the movie. The movie was quite funny and it had its quite jokey things, and yeah, it was pretty good. It was really, really good.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, Sonika. I thought, yeah, that's a good point. Like they don't specify in what way the world was polluted. So yeah, that's open to interpretation. It could be through a number of things. But for me, it feels like certainly the film. I don't think it's as open ended as probably even Anata's things. Wherever she's gone. I think it's certainly trying to communicate something. Whether how well it does it for everybody might be what we can discuss. But yeah, I generally I felt I heard everything. I feel like I heard everything. At least close to everything. There were a lot of things said. In fairness, the one of the things I really liked about this was like some of the way they do the jokes. Again, it's not just about having somebody funny just ad lib some things funny. I remember when he becomes an Okoroshi and they um they're trying to his wife is trying to get him help, and so they go into a hospital, and you just see it's the way it's framed is just picture the outside of the gate, and you can see there's a hospital they're going in, and he goes Okoroshi and his wife goes in, and then what you see is the doctors and the nurses run out of the gate, and then a guy on crutches runs out of the gate as well, following that. I thought that was hilarious. Anyway, but yeah, that's it's just some of the really best writing I've seen in a bit, is for humor especially. But yeah, Mel, did you have more? Has more things come to mind that you wanted to ask?
Yeah. I'm glad I let Onikan go because he touched on the some things that I wanted to touch on. But I also wanted to gather my thoughts because you brought up the scene with Chiwetel Agu's character, and I have many thoughts about that scene, and I wanted to coordinate them in such a way that they make sense. So I would start with the pollution that Chiwetel Agu brings up, and just how, for me, it's indicative of how the film progresses. And the way that I think the film progresses based off of that is that it fails to fails okay it neglects to properly engage with its own critique, and I have a problem with that. This viewpoint about traditionality versus modernity, spirituality, it's one that I recognize, that I relate to, that I identify with, and maybe that is why maybe that is why this is such a personal loss for me, I guess. So he talks about pollution, and maybe if we take your interpretation of people wanting the masquerade for their own purposes, then we can say, okay, then the idea of pollution continues throughout the film. But if you didn't see that, if you didn't interpret everybody, and I didn't interpret everybody as trying to use the masquerade for their own purposes, there were some people, but it wasn't everybody. Um, and if you don't interpret it in that way, then you don't hear about pollution again until towards the end, when you see the shot of him in front of the refuse bin. And that felt jarring to me because, okay, we're at the end, we're at the finish line, but I don't know what this means. What's the pollution that you're talking about? If we go back to the beginning, then we'll be like, okay, maybe the pollution is the phones that Raymond and his co-worker complain about, how everybody is always looking at phones. Okay, but then that's not sufficient, is it? So it's like, what does this pollution mean? It touches upon it. It doesn't engage with it, and just continues on. And it felt like there were so many things as well in the film that it touches upon, does not engage with, does not sufficiently engage with, and just keeps moving on. And that's why I'll be like, okay, this tradition versus modernity. It feels like the point of the film is about spirituality, about the past, I guess, about the ancestors finding material form in the present, right? But then it also doesn't properly engage with that. It almost immediately jumps into tradition versus modernity, and that's why said it felt distracted, because it has all of these ideas, all of these abstract ideas that it symbolizes beautifully. I agree, but it doesn't properly engage with. What is it critiquing? I can't. We all have so many different ideas of what the film is critiquing because it doesn't properly engage with its own critique. You pick up Things Fall Apart, you know exactly what Achebe's critique was. And the same thing with the horde of African literatures that have dealt with this past present bridge thing. You know exactly what the critique is. But then what is the critique of this film? You can guess, but the film itself doesn't directly tell you what it is. And this is what I feel frustrated by. So back to the first scene again. This is another way in which I see it, distraction at least. So Chiwetalu jumps from talking about pollution into talking about being frustrated with city life. It's a frustration we understand. Anyone can relate to. I'm guessing, especially Lagos people. We see the tweets. It's a frustration a lot of people can relate to. We always talk about the good old days. We can't. It doesn't properly engage with that frustration. It immediately jumps into Chiwetalu foreshadowing his suicide, because he gives the first time I see that, I'm like, oh, this guy is going to unalive himself. It was very clear. And this is another thing that like frustrates me about the story, because it lumps Chiwetalu's frustration with the present world and unaliving itself with Raymond's choice to be joined with the ancestors. And so my question is why? Because immediately he gives him the hint that he wants to unalive himself, he says to Raymond, the next time they come after you, don't run. Ha. Because the way that I interpret this is connected to his death. This sentence he just said is connected to his death. So this sentence he just gave to Raymond is connected to Raymond's death as well. And I think that symbolically, I see this death throughout Raymond's life. His wife, when he goes to the club scene, I guess it could have been cute, compared to like the club scene in what's that, Niger Christmas. I guess this was cute. But then the first thing that I'm thinking is, where is his wife? And then it turns out his wife has been looking for him. So that felt like a death in a way of his marriage, of this woman's life that she's built around him, because she doesn't look like she's financially sustainable by herself. And then at the end, when he does actually physically die. So it's why it never engages with why Raymond chooses this death.
Chooses.
It's so frustrating.
Did
Sorry?
Did you say chooses his death?
Yeah, chooses. Because again, the first time that Chiwetalu talks to him about accepting the ancestors, the masquerades, when they run after you, don't run. When they chase, don't run. He says it immediately after he's hinted at his own death.
Yeah.
So this is symbolically a death of sorts. But it never engages with the why, because he stops and okay, so it happens after like we've seen him cry about losing Okonkwo. That's what he called him. That was his name, Ichie. So we see him cry, and I guess we can feel it. I can feel it. I'm like, oh, they were friends. He liked him. They shared the same ideas about tradition and all of that. But when he stops in the dream to accept the masquerade, it feels like it's a stopping that's driven out of frustration. And I don't know what that frustration is at. Like, okay, I know you want to build a farm, but like, what else? Anyway, I don't think it properly engaged. And I think that was just indicative of like the rest of the film, how it just touches upon things and drops them. And that was what felt frustrating.
Okay. I'll Rotimi, you speak in a bit. I don't know. It feels like there's some. I didn't make the connection you're making to the end of Chiwetalu's sentence to the death of. It just felt to me like Raymond has been called, like Raymond is going to be the Lost Okoroshi. Like we know this from the start. Like he has this, it's in him. He's a security guard, which okay, this that part is reading a little bit, but like he's already sort of in the job of protecting. Right. It reminds me of Unbreakable. When Unbreakable, I don't know if you guys have seen Unbreakable. Unbreakable is like one of M. Night Shyamalan's comic book thing where the guy Bruce Willis, who doesn't know he has powers, but later on discovers that he has powers later in life when he meets so and so person. But like his job was a security guard as well, because there's a point where Mr. Glass, a guy in the film, says to him that, hey, like this is how of all, he's telling him that he's a superhero, and like it's like of all professions he chose to be a security guard, and there are just prints of Raymond's. There are little things where you see that Raymond is being called to be the Okoroshi. Like he's so like all he's doing is accepting what he's running from. Right? It's not a death for me. It's just accepting what. Again, like you have to think about this. I really do think this is like our own superhero movie. It generally is. So you see him. There's a point where he covers he uses his security cap to cover his eyes, and he starts dancing. He's dancing on the Okada, right? And like he's happy. Like he has the innate. He's been like he has this joy in him, and it's one of the reasons why like you really feel for him as time goes along. But like I think the thing about being an Okoroshi was there right from the start. Like I mean, like there's no if it, there doesn't seem any other reason. The police guard thing might be a stretch, but like I don't see any other reason why he would put his cap overneath his over his eyes, cover his eyes, and be dancing. Like it's just the foreshadowing of what is in Raymond, and Raymond is destined to be the Okoroshi. It's like he's discovering his powers. Anyway, we'll come back to you if you have more questions. Rotimi, what did you have to say?
Okay. Hello. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So first off, when I first saw this, I kind of saw the trailer of this movie, and I'm thinking to myself, okay, guys got to change to a masquerade. Okay, this is weird. I'm not watching this thing. I refuse. This is some oddball stuff I'm not used to. And I kind of like, so one day I'm like, okay, I don't have anything to watch. I'm saying, okay, look, let me just try and check it out. And I'm watching it, and I think Mel has said everything and everything that can be said about this movie. I think that just for me, my own, like I'm so open to watching different kinds of things. I'm maybe in a way all the questions she's left with. I'm also probably left with those kind of questions, but I think I'm comfortable being left with those questions and not knowing the answers to those things, because I think that's part of what makes this film, should I say, unique. That's part of the watching experience of watching this, because it's not what you're used to. So you're like, okay, this guy changed to masquerade, all the thing. It's odd, but it's different, and I think it's different in a good way. I think it's different in a good way. I like what you have been saying as per Iroko, what you have been saying about the superhero origin. I get that, like the difference between Shango and Thor is packaging. So I don't know if anybody has seen this trailer. I hate doing examples of things. There's one new trailer, one of these Disney's new shows for Marvel, Moon Knight. Like literally, this guy is like he's thinking he's having a mental breakdown. Then secretly, he's really the Moon Knight, and he changes eyes. Literally, he transforms into this Moon Knight character. And I'm like, yeah, this is like when you give the example that this is our own superhero origin story. So I'm like, this guy transforming into Sheung transforming into the last Okoroshi is almost like going the guys that want to give them powers. Most of when you have superhero stuff, powers, when they start to manifest, the people are first like rejecting that, no, it can't be possible. Why am I suddenly manifesting this thing and everything? So he transforms into this Okoroshi. So I'm like, yes, this could be a superhero origin. I think now there are sometimes when I watch some certain movies, I'm like, I go into this whole thing of like, why, if this thing was a series, how would this thing play out? So how the individual stories, whether with the prostitutes, the guys with the the red cap, the guys with the red caps at the end, I don't want Eastern guys that were having a meeting, the guy that was following him to dance. If I broke all these things into individual stories, so I could follow them all as individual, like one episode of the series, so I could break down all the stories. So I think that with a longer format, all the questions that Mel, you understand, all the things we are delving into, even with the professor and everything, could be broken down more. So, but within the space that he has, the director has, which is like, I think it's also like a style. All those whether jump cuts, everything, were all stylistic choices. I don't know if anybody has seen this movie. Sorry to bother you. there's one I think Lakeith Stanfield. So it's those kind of odd movies. They're like a movie, but it's odd. It's almost like this surreal reality that it's like in the real world, but it's almost like this can't happen in the real world and everything. You saw a guy, yeah, just dancing, the masquerade dancing. A guy transformed into a masquerade, have basically wearing a masquerade suit, but he can't take it off and dancing on the street. Like, this is odd. This is weird. So it's. I think there's room. I think that's why I think in the whole when it comes. In fact, I always go back to this whole general Nollywood industry thing. I think what the thing that is happening now, and I think that is what we should be encouraged is to break the variations of stories that we have. Like, there should be odd stories. There should be the typical romance. There should be action. If there's sci-fi, I think we just need to break the mold. So I'm always open to the idea. So now maybe the problem when you talked back to that thing what you said in Ukoh about the packaging between Thor and Shango. Most of the times, most of these ideas that we have is like, it's a cool idea. How well is it executed? And as a power listener, like when Mel is asking for the question, she's like, I'm an audience member. I'm watching this thing, but I can't get the answers out of this thing. And it's weird. It's almost like first time when somebody's watching The Matrix. A lot of people when you watch The Matrix is like, oh, the cool special effects with the gun effect, but there are a lot of theological questions that in Matrix, and somebody cannot 100% say. Everybody has different theories. I cannot 100% tell you that this is exactly what happened in The Matrix. So it's the idea. So how cool? So most of the time when I watch something, I'm just like, okay, this is a cool idea. How well is it executed? But I'm like, I see what it's trying to go for, and I'm like, okay, this is different. Could I get more of this? Is there room? That's why, like, whenever people start the things like juju stories, most of the things when it comes to like things maybe spiritual, you don't really get a definitive ending in the sense. It just kind of leaves you at a cliffhanger, and you have more questions than answers and everything. So I like it. I think it was a great attempt. I think it's Abba. I don't want to butcher his last name. I think it was nice. I think it was cool. And I'm thinking again. Sorry, that there's a weird way. I don't know when like Juju Stories came out beginning of this year, and I went to watch the cinema, and I'm like, half of my spirit is just like, this thing. I don't know that it can't go to cinema, but I'm like, this thing belongs on a streaming service, because there are some things that still does mean that the whole cinema space is not yet ready for just different things. So I'm like, but on streaming, you're in the comfort of your house, maybe on bed one day, you can check it out. I'm like, oh, this is different, this is odd. But I'm like, I can watch it in the comfort of my house, as opposed to like, I don't want to know and bet my money whether I'm going to go and watch it or not. So things like Juju Stories, things like the Last Okoroshi, I'm like, this is so streaming. Just give me all this at home and everything. And I'm like, us that are like unique things, we can watch this one. I even think, sorry, even funny things like maybe a Yimo Fair. I don't know, because I know it had the cinema run, but I don't think the cinema run was long. I'm like, everything that is different, just give it to us in streaming. We that want to have this kind of discussion, sit down at home and watch it. You want to watch what you want to watch, is cool. No, there's no yawa. I can also go to the cinema and watch that too. And I think that's it. I think it's more for me, even like the director. For me, I'm just like, okay, guy, I don't know even when you talk about like how you go about writing a script like this. To me, it's the most challenging. Like, if I was writing the script, how am I going to go about writing the script? And I'm like, this is weird. And I'm like, okay, this guy just went ahead and did this. And I'm like, wow, this guy did this movie like this. That's also the same way I felt about Juju Stories. Like, this guy just went and made this story. Wow, I wish I had this kind of guts to make stories like this and just make them and damn the consequences. And like, hey, why is this movie like this? Why is this movie? And I'm like, yes, the movie's like that. Go and enjoy it like that. That's great. I think that there should be more. I will encourage them to do more, because we need to just diversify the space. So I think I've said it was nice to watch. I think that's all for me.
All right. Thank you, Rotimi. Thanks. Yeah, more diversity is always good. Even to Mel's point, I wouldn't even encourage. I don't think there's any point in diversity for diversity's sake.
Yeah.
Like, there's no point in giving us 50 different flavors of garbage or nonsense. Like, it's good to be good at what the different flavor you're doing as well. All right, Oyin can't, and I'll go back to Mel, see if Mel has more.
There's something wrong with. Okay. Well, yeah. So what Mel was saying, definitely she has a lot of points that I definitely do see in that movie. It does feel it isn't as clarified as something. I wouldn't say that this I I might be a little bit I might be a little bit shady, but I'm not trying to be shady. The movie, I truly enjoyed the movie, but it definitely seems to be just doing a typical, like, everything bad critic. Like everything that we realize can be bad is bad critic, rather than it having more of a, like, more salient and more something more focused critique on one specific thing that you might want to talk out and fill out. And I can't get why Milk, why she says that, why she's saying yeah. But at the same time, I don't necessarily think all movies has to be like a very, very salient with its critique like that. But I can get what Mel is saying. And especially the movie does make a lot of references, like Okonkwo, obviously it's a reference to things fall apart. And also, I'm a bit confused because if it's because it's definitely making a reference to things fall apart with Okonkwo's character, and I'm just like, okay, how does this Okonkwo connect with our Okonkwo in this? What, they both die from being stubborn or what? I don't get it. But like, or is it in connection to Lost Okoroshi or? But again, movies don't necessarily, you know me, I tend to say that movies don't necessarily have to answer all those things. But also, like, with the thing about it's, I'm glad that you guys brought up the whole superhero thing and Thor. Um, One thing people must also realize is that Marvel's Thor is not completely different. It does take what's it called, inspiration from Norse mythology, but it is different. It is different. Like Loki is a villain in this story. And yes, there are many times that when Loki is indeed the villain in Norse mythology, but like it's very slightly different. Also, one of the reasons why you can also know it's different is this: Loki is not Thor's brother, not even step brother. Is his uncle in Norse mythology. The Norse mythology is has very much different ways and different. It's very different than necessarily the Marvel incarnation of it. And it kind of falls into what I kind of feel as an interpretation of the story, where there is also like when we take the local stories, like because the Norse mythology is a local story that gets pushed out when it comes in Christianity to it, where we take the local stories and we can modify it in a way, and it's so different. The communication, the Disney, because these things are also still corporate. Marvel is a corporate something, right? And when it is not taking the inspiration, or it's not even taking the actual story that it actually of the Norse mythology into consideration. It waters it down to something that is sellable. It's not capturing the actual local and indigenous stories very well. So it's packaging, but also Shango is not Thor, and the Thor in the Marvel is not actual Thor.
Yep. All right. Okay. So, Vanessa, then Mel, we'll come
Me,
back.
I just wanted to say that the similarity similarities between Ichie and Okonkwo in Things Fall Apart is they both share the same commentary on with regards to like the modernization, I guess, of our world and like the forgetting of our cultures. Even though Okonkwo was willing to have one son go and see what the white man's church was about, in Things Fall Apart, Okonkwo was very adamant about the retaining of what made them Igbo and retaining of their gods and the retaining of their culture and all of that. And I think that's the similarity between Ichie in Lost Okoroshi. He also shares the same sentiment with regards to the culture and our masquerades and our spirituality and what colonialism basically has done. So I guess that's the link between the two of them, aside from the shared name. Um, Me, I just want to give an honorable shout out to Ipshir It is deep. I don't know if that's how it is pronounced, but I just think it's amazing that a secret society
With
has a
different
Banner
brands.
outside.
it's those things that make it very Nigerian, because how do you say you're a secret society but you have a huge sign
But
that
that's
How are the members
that
supposed to
says
find their
out
way
loud to the
down
world
to
that
the
you're a
side?
secret society? So where is the secret? Are you an open secret? But again, you must
if
that. But yeah, I just wanted to give an honorable shout out to them, because I mean they made the film. I'm sorry, like
yeah,
everybody made the film though, like
Shout
yeah.
out to the
caps and
director.
like their round table and those little things just
Oh.
added to like the tapestry of it all.
Yeah, it's like the little details of this. Like it could have just been, oh yeah, all right, okay, so there's a society, but like they go in depth into discussion of, again, they're trying to like they're trying, everybody wants to use the Okoroshi, right? Like they want to take, some people want to take it to the east, some people want to keep it here
Yeah.
in Lagos. And
Yeah.
I love the details, like, so how would we
Put
come
it
and
on
see it?
Facebook.
Hey, if you say you wish me happy birthday on Facebook last time, you say you know way to Facebook, go to Facebook, you will see him there. It's all these interesting things, but yeah, that's uh, I'm interested in Mel's that, like, I think Mel mentioned that you don't think everybody wanted to use him. I'm interested in which person you didn't think wanted to use the
I mean, his
Okoroshi.
wife wasn't trying to use him, just trying to help
No,
her
no, no,
husband. But
not
yeah,
yeah, not the wife. Obviously,
yeah.
no. The wife doesn't interact with the Okoroshi. To be well, barely interacts with the Okoroshi. To be honest, like it's that beginning part. But
It's her
yeah,
trying to give him help. Yeah.
everybody who interacts with the Okoroshi as the Okoroshi, because like she's interacting with him as Raymond self. To be
Yeah.
honest, right? Like she wants her husband back. But everybody else is like is, hey, how can we do this? Like the it's stated very much like when Chiwetel is doing a sort of exposition of the setup of the Okoroshi, like it's talking about how the spirit didn't care for material things and all of that, and what he was, and his actual calling. And one of the first things the I can't remember the small guy that was following him around, that wanted to be collecting money. He's like, hey, we can go this place. Imagine our face on billboards, Willy Willy and Okoroshi. Like
Yeah.
everybody wants to make coin from my man, and my man don't want coin. My man just want to go about doing his job. But yeah, Mel, did you are there any more?
Yeah, I really like that the people in this story are not some, like, the more villainous people in this story. Like, even though really is still sort of trustworthy because he's still giving the money. He actually, the Orokoroshi does not pick up his money, and really pick up the money and actually went to give it to the Okoroshi. And he's still with the Okoroshi, and it's kind of still like he waits for the Okoroshi in the bushes. He still has like, it's still it's still like, it's still not villainous. So like the real villainous people in this movie are tend to be like the boss, right? Who went to try to kill a prostitute and all that stuff. And I kind of like how, like, it's not the downtrodden people necessarily that are like made into like villain, because made into villain, it's more people like people that actually have some sort of money and powers in real world that are actually made into like villains. And I kind of like that. And Willie is homeless. I feel so bad for him.
Willy Willy is homeless.
Willie is
Yeah,
an homeless young
yeah,
man.
yeah,
Like
yeah,
he's homeless.
yeah,
Like,
yeah. No, yeah, he
yeah,
is.
and in the first two, just for that, the boss has money instead of the fact that he's even getting a prostitute. First of all, it makes me look at me down on him. But like, you have money, give the person the money for the work that they did, and you're not giving the person the money for the work that they did. Instead, you wanted to kill her. You get what I'm saying? Like, there is actual quite cruelty and darkness in this movie, and it's showing like the people that actually does the cruelty and the darkness, and the Ish people. As funny as that entire thing will happen, they are talking about things that are relevant to to Nigerian society now. We are like we have issue like oh yeah, yeah, like we come from the east, but we are here in Lagos and we married to Yoruba people. What are we supposed to do? You remember, like in like the ethnicity something. So even though yes, this thing does it is very like it does touches on a lot of issues that are going to modern Nigeria today, like ethnic tensions and ethnic clashes and like the migration within Nigeria and all that stuff. It touches on a lot of those things, which is why I like this movie. Like this movie, yes, is he very salient in being direct on what is he trying to say? No, but it says a lot. And that's the beginning. That's a good beginning. It was funny though. It was entirely funny and it really was.
All right. Thanks. Mel, did you have something you wanted to say something?
Sure thing. I don't think I agree. Definitely agree with Oyinkang. I don't think really was trying to use the Okoroshi. I think that if we're going by your interpretation of the Okoroshi as some sort of superhero, then a superhero needs a sidekick, and that was really, and he was just doing the work of a loyal sidekick, looking out for the Okoroshi.
I think it can
Okay,
be
you
both.
take
It
what?
can be both. It can be both. I think when Willy met Okoroshi, his what he saw was means to a bag. It's I think it's quite. I mean, like if you watch the way Willy meets Okoroshi, he picks up his money, right, and he goes up to him and is like, "Hey, look at all the thing we made." Okoroshi just keeps on walking. Okoroshi doesn't care about money. Okoroshi doesn't eat. Okoroshi is not going to use the money. Nothing like but Willy's painting this picture of how they can be big and do all these things that their face will be on billboards. Willy and Okoroshi, like he's already thinking about himself. Like it's very I mean, like to me, that seems like very obvious, stating where his needs are intentional. I know, like later on, he does become like the sidekick. It does turn out that way. Like it does seem like no, Willy now is partnering with Okoroshi for things outside of himself. But like it felt really like finding someone after a while. Like there's so many this archetype is found in so many, like I'm thinking about Rain Man. I don't know if you've seen Rain Man. Yeah, Rain Man sees sorry, not Rain. Tom Cruise sees Dustin Hoffman's character and figures out, oh look, you have this amazing ability. I'm going to use you in the casino to make all of the money, right? And then later on they form a bond. It's not uncommon. Sorry, I want to interrupt you again. No, go on.
It's perfectly fine. Okay, I don't entirely disagree with what you've said. I think that even as you were speaking, the end scene, the last scene came to mind, where when they discover his body, everybody is gathered, but they leave, and just that scene of just his wife left to bear this emptiness, I think was very striking for me. So like it does make sense. But I also wanted to argue the sex worker wasn't did not search him out for his money. In fact, he
Oh,
searched her out to save her. No,
no.
every time there
She's
was
one of
an
the worst.
encounter between yeah.
She's one of
The
the worst.
music video
I
She's
with
know.
the
one of the
voodoo.
worst.
Can I make the argument? Every time
Go
there's an
on, sorry.
encounter
Sorry.
between them,
Sorry, I thought I was going to interrupt. It's Mr. C.
Oh wow.
Go on, Mel.
but every time there's an encounter between them, he's the one who's made the effort to go seek her out. And then every time he gives her money, she spends the money on everybody. So that's my argument.
Yeah.
Um,
In this movie, the sex worker, Willy, all those people are not meant to be evil. They're actually quite the nice ones. They are, even though yes, they come with their own necessary needs. Of course, they need Willy is homeless. Of course, if he finds a way that he can make money appropriately, it's not stealing. It can make money appropriately. Willy needs money to sleep. I mean, he's homeless. You cannot be like, okay, because of that, he's evil. Because no, he's homeless. He needs money. He needs money. That's like you're supposed to accept that. She's a prostitute. There's a reason why people become prostitutes. They don't choose to be prostitutes. They become prostitutes because they need money. And we literally met her. She literally says, "Oh, I'm doing prostitution in the daylight because at night there are crazy people that will try to kill you." And we literally met her with this guy that we already know that he has money. He's the boss of something, and he's not willing to pay. She gave her services, and he wasn't willing to pay. Instead, he was willing to kill her. He was literally willing to kill her. She's not the worst, and every time she spent the money that he gives her on everybody, indeed. And like whenever she sees him, she's like, hello to the Okoroshi. She's not using the Okoroshi. She's being quite nice. She's saying hello to somebody in her neighborhood that actually rescued her. Like, you can understand where she's coming from. If she's a tough person, she's a prostitute that was just trying to be killed by
Okay,
one
that
of her
okay.
guns. Like, we
That's
can
not.
understand that. She's nice. The person that is the villain in this is definitely the people that have the money. Like, his boss literally tried to kill somebody
Yeah,
just so that he can't pay, like, what,
I don't.
2,000 naira for something that he already got, by the way.
I don't see it as. I don't see it as villains. I just see it as like they're just humans, and the humans here are somewhat corrupt or selfish, that kind of thing. It's not. It doesn't make you a villain. It just makes you a human being who in for like the reason why I say like she's one of the worst is like because certainly Willy Willy is less Willy Willy is less in for himself to me. Like she goes in and immediately from the when she takes him to the club is and sits with that guy who wants to put a question in his video. She's the one like raising the prices. She's like, oh, she starts with, oh, is it 2 million? Oh, 3 million or whatever. Also, after Okoroshi saves her, by the way, she doesn't care. She's like, oh, that guy, my money is what I was after. Like, why have you let him run away? Like, she didn't thank him. Oh, thank you for saving me. Her thing is her bag, right? Like that's what she's in for. And it's just again, it doesn't make her a terrible person. It's but like she's very self-involved. There's well she self is selfish. Her interest is herself. Is it's very very has as plain as day. More so than Willy, I guess was where I was going at with when I think they come looking for him. There are a couple of cases. I think there's one time when she's speaking to her fellow colleague on the road, and she basically says this like, you know, when the other colleague is afraid, like she's like, nah, this is going to be. I think she makes some reference to this being an opportunity for bag. But yeah, she's definitely in for herself, which is fine. But it's human, but like it's not. It's clearly not altruism.
I get that she's not really in for herself because she doesn't really do like she is, but like the way she's in for herself is not that bad. It's not even bad. Like it's she treats him with respect and everything. She tells her something not to be,
No, 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 no.
and then she
You guys, you're looking at this
introduces
wrong.
him to that person.
She's trying to. She's like actively trying to use him. Like that's all she's in it for. Uh, there is again like I think the conversations I point to you would be the one where she speaks to her colleague when they're coming back. When Okoroshi and Willy Willy are coming back to us the second time. Um,
Okay, she says that, but like her actions, I'm talking about the actions that she actually makes. She does spend the money on all of them. When he gives her the money,
we
she
don't know
feeds
how
them.
much.
When she does, she takes all of them to something. She said she increases the price to like, okay, instead of like, oh, well, she really who doesn't know that much was like about to give for like 2,000. She's like, no, don't say that. Say something more.
No.
She
She
increases all
said
the she so all the how is she in for like
no. Willy
the
doesn't
thing
say
is that
price.
like you
Willy
can't
doesn't say price.
Willy Willy doesn't say a price. Willy Willy was like trying to like stutter. She named the price. She's like 2 million, and then
Yes,
she
she
started.
names the
She's like,
price
no,
because Willy
three
Willy
million.
doesn't. Willy
Oh,
Willy was not going to say something. He was still going thinking all these things. She already has the smartness of saying like, okay, 2 million, 3 million. She names the
right.
price for them. That was good. That she knows that person has that is all that is actually advantageous for them. Like
Here's the
she
thing.
she
It,
is not
she
like if
doesn't.
in the
She
entire show
doesn't.
she's not the worst. She's not even up to the worst. Like she and Willy Willy are like more sympathetic characters, and they are more sympathetic. The worst is the guy that tried to kill somebody.
Keep on misunderstanding what is sympathetic with like just somebody's self interest, like somebody's aim for themselves doesn't it doesn't mean they can't be sympathetic. You can't sympathize with them. You can. I'm not. Yeah. Well, it's just like see, on one end you have the Lost Okoroshi who is going around just literally just like bringing prosperity and like literally taking out bad guys with his freeze and his cane, right? With his
Okay.
freeze power and his skin. And on the other hand, you have somebody who is like, oh, I see opportunity for a bag. I don't care. I'm not even interested to know like what your situation is, whether you want to be in the video or not, or whether it's good. Like, I'm gonna make the bag. Like that's her. That's where her thing is. It doesn't make her a bad person. Go to you, Mel.
So I hear what you're saying. I don't feel too invested to argue against, but I was going to raise you something. So the people that you've listed, I would argue, are just a handful of the people that he does encounter. And so I'm going to say the people who did not try to take advantage of him were the people that he met on the streets and who just enjoyed his whatever he represented, who danced with him, who laughed with him. And those people are significant. Again, that thing where like the movie touches upon something and then neglects to like properly engage with it. Because Chiwetalu's character talks about them and says anywhere the Okoroshi goes, any of the people who have accepted the happiness that it brings, it gives them good luck or good vibes. I don't know. It gives them something good, sha. Um, so those people, and this is why these people stood out for me, because these were the sort of people that Chiwetalu's character was talking about, that the Okoroshi exists for these people who believe, these people who would welcome him, I guess, who would welcome it, who would accept it and what it represented, who would dally in the joy that it's trying to share. Those people are important, and we see them. The way that he meets the person who ends up murdering him is by protecting one of these people who are enjoying him. So I would say he meets more people who enjoy him than people who try to take advantage of him. So I think almost definitely not everybody does.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't talking about sheer numbers. I was just talking about in terms of people that sort of have lines, just general characters. All the characters in the movie that interact with him are just I'm trying to. But I guess I take your point. It's not everybody, but like that's what it can't possibly be everybody. I mean, like yeah, if not, it would be hell. It would be hell. We're not saying the current world is hell. We're saying that there are people who are corrupt, in this world anyway, who are influencing sort of the spiritual world, and the spiritual world is sort of influence. It's like it's a circle of something's a circle of life. Like so yeah, that's I think that would be my response to that. I'm not saying that it's everybody, but yeah, it's only some people.
Oh, I just want to clarify. I get what you're trying to say. I was just trying to say that we should not necessarily forget the guy that tried to kill somebody.
Oh yeah.
We should
Very
not necessarily forget like the guy that actually tried to kill somebody,
yeah.
and all is
That
shown in the something was just like it's completely, there was no sympatheticness with him. Like there was just nothing sympathetic about him. It
yeah.
was completely cruel and terrible, and it was. I, that's just what I just. That was what I was just trying to say. I mean, maybe indeed yes, she was trying to use, but I felt like this movie was just was pretty cool. It was a pretty cool movie, and yeah, the people that he met on the streets were the people that was not trying to really completely use him. Even the secret society too, they were using him, like the people that clearly has some sort of like power or some sort of financial security and all those things. They were the ones that were using him the most. Out of
Yeah.
all of them, the ones that were using him the most, and that was so it was different to see in a Nigerian movie, because oftentimes, for instance, if it's a movie about like a movie set in the home, right? The house girl is the horrible, cruel house girl that came to that the what's it called, control the master to probably to have sex with her, when in reality most house girls are really young girls, and like can they say no to their masters, and most house girls are raped. Like, can they literally say no? In all honesty, can they say no? Would they not be, they took them from the village? Would they not be outside and or something? And sometimes Nigerian movies don't even think about this imbalance of power and thing, and make it seem like the house girl is horrible. And like the way we make fun of poor people too, the way we do that, we villainize. We're a very classist society, and we do villainize a lot of people that are like, and I feel like it is time for Nigerian movies to get past that and stop doing that, and like actually take the people who has actually power to account. Like, let's say the truth about the country that we live in.
Yeah. All right. I'm going to. Any of our speakers have anything they want to add? Mel.
Okay, sure. I think this can be condensed into one point. And I think that honestly, all the other things I've been saying, this is this is the thing for me. It might come through a bit more academic, but let's see how that goes. So I think that I would say that for a film that portends towards Africanness and African traditions, it felt a bit Western centric in its approach. I know that we've talked about how Nigerian the film feels, but for me, when I see this, I'm thinking more in terms of, I guess, what the professor, maybe not represents, but what the professor, let's say, represents, the arguments that the professor is used to make. And I would start with, what will I start with? I'll start with the music. This is why sometimes I like the music, sometimes I don't. The scoring. Because when we meet Chiwetalu's character, it's an, I think, the Igbo gong. I used to know what it was called, but I don't anymore. But it's a more traditional, more Igbo sound. When the Okoroshi has completed its transmogrification, it's William Onyebo. And I love William Onyebo, but the thing about William Onyebo is that when people want to talk about him, they talk about him as the Nigerian African who naturalized electric music, with the idea that electric music is a very Western, very white sound. So this is also why I feel like he felt distracted, because the way that I interpreted it, by showing us the Okoroshi and as playing this music as well, I assume you're trying to tell me something. And the way that I interpret it is that you're trying to juxtapose. Because it also feels like that when they show these shots of the Okoroshi in front of like high-rise, super uber modern buildings. So it's like, okay, so there's a juxtaposition happening, but I don't know what the point of juxtaposition is. So another part of the Westernness wouldn't just be William Onyebo's music because he's Nigerian, but would also be like this really popular sound, like classical sound that is in like in a shit ton of movies. The Ride of the Valkyries. It's it's in the movie, and so it's. I hear what you're saying, and that's one of the disconnects for me. I know what the dialogue is saying. I hear it, but what the film is telling me is a bit of a different story. I'm also going to talk about the books. I hate how they're arranged, but that's just me. I generally just hate how books are arranged. Um, but the important thing is the camera stops on, I think, every single book on that table. And that means to me that it's important. It means that the director is asking me to pay attention. And so I did. I paid attention to the books. But it's filled with a lot more Western books than African books, or than books that deal with African traditions at all. And I think that this just reminded me of a point that I think disagrees with what you said about the professor being skeptic initially, because his office is filled with like idols, statuettes. So I think he's more traditional in that sense. But anyway, so I'm looking at the books and it's like a tarot card, and it's a book about like Western occultic, and then it's just a book of essays about Wole Soyinka. And that's important to me because we know Wole Soyinka as the more traditional, more in tune with his traditions, with his ancestry, with his past history. Sorry, that's the word I wanted to say. So we know Wole Soyinka to be that person, but we don't see a book by Wole Soyinka. We see a book with essays sort of about Wole Soyinka. What else do we see? We see something called Nigerian magazine that tells us absolutely nothing about anything. And then we see the State of Africa, which doesn't even deal with like African traditions at all. It deals with like just a Western view of African history. Good book. I don't hate on it. But anyway, so this is it just feels that disconnected to me, because you're saying to me all these things about Africanness and reconnecting with the past, and you're portraying Raymond as this bridge between the past and the present, and how the spiritual past is always trying to connect with us. We were to all of these things, but then it also just feels like, what is this other thing that I see going on? That for me, I don't know how to explain it in a way that isn't just me just talking to my friends. But that for me was a very huge disconnect for me. It didn't make sense.
I think I understand you, but I'm not sure if you're mistaking. So when to invoke Nigeria or African, or certainly when I feel like, say, this movie feels very Nigerian, I just mean like it's clear it's made for a Nigerian, like there's some in its dialogue, in its mannerisms, like in just the way it is, a lot of the dialogue is generally, that's what I mean by that. But like the thing about the spirit, the physical and the spiritual, it's intentionally stated in there that it's not just a African thing. Like the professor brings the point about um, um, a couple of people who have gone on. I think there were many murders, in psychotic murders. Like I'm trying to remember. One was where a guy,
The
Slenderman
killing,
killing, like, right, yes. Like the point is that, and that's hence the ending where they're masked from different cultures, is that this is not just a phenomenon for Africa or for Nigeria. The phenomenon is global, that it happens everywhere. That's what, again, like, if there isn't any state stating that this is just a thing that happens in Nigeria or anything. So I wouldn't have restrained it to that. So I don't know if that answers your question. Between the like the music, look, the music, nobody can like music or like that. That's just something that will either appeal to you or it won't. Um, I know some people don't like it. I think it's actually an ABBA signature. I think ABBA likes putting classical music in very strange places in his movies, and it either works for you or it doesn't. I understand if it doesn't. I really fucked with the synth sounds. Like they were part of this really dreamy dreamy feel of the movie for when Raymond was in a dream. It really sold it to me. Like I I really bought into the world. Like there's one of the criticisms that I have sometimes of films is that sometimes somebody just writes. A lot of times, our writers are writing things as, "Hey, this person will say this thing to this person, and then this person will say this thing to this person, and that's how it's going to be. It's going to be, like it's just people interacting in words and wanting them to do things. There are very few people who think about film holistically as like, hey, it's not just things that people say to each other. It's actions that they do. It's things that we hear. So like this film for me, like really, aside from just the dialogue, like it's the feeling that it gives you in places is just, sometimes it's just like the film just like, sometimes just staring, there's shots where you're just staring into the Okoroshi mask, right? And like you're sort of the way it's edited, you will pass on certain feelings, or you will interpret certain feelings onto the mask. Like that scene at the end with the flare, that's just something that I just love so much. But yeah, I don't know if I answered the question, your question of regards to the dichotomy with the thing, and music is, hey, it works for you, it doesn't. But in terms of like the Western feel, like it doesn't seem like a clash for me. It's intentional that it's supposed to be a global thing, and also whilst also being a very Nigerian film too for Nigerians.
Maybe I don't know if it answers my question. It raises more arguments for me, and one of those would be that decolonization in this way isn't actually a global thing. It's a thing that very specific types of people have to endure, and would be people who have been colonized. So that's what it is, and I think that's what, like, academically, it's not very competent with the way in which it approaches these issues. It's also why it felt Western centric, because it felt like it was taking Western ideas or Westernized ideas, and just slapping on that. That makes it sound like no, but it felt like they were taking Westernized ideas and just giving a film, but the people that, okay, so I want to be very careful about what I say. I think that it would have benefited from someone else being in the room, someone with a better understanding being in the room. I think that that's exactly what I want to say.
Oh, okay. I mean, like,
You know what?
all right.
Okay, I get where you're coming from about like a lot of modern ideas and a lot of things that I are definitely from westernized views, and but also colonized people, maybe because I am a little bit more general, like a humanistic thing, or generally feels my own sort of thing. Colonized people, yes, for now, like in this modern 21st century, because of definitely colonialism that happened, is definitely our current world order is definitely raised by the colonization of brown people, of people from Asia, South America, even though South America is a bit iffy because some of the South Americans themselves were colonizers. But yeah, South America, but modern colonization, Southern America or Africa, all this way. But we also should not ignore that even within Europe, colonization also happened within Europe, like the Sami people. even the spread of Christianity, all those things. All it's ultimately for me like colonization is a tool of capitalism. But with that said, yes, you do have a point. I love ideas and modern ideas that we tend to have, even especially also in the global south, is very much undertaken by neoliberalist thought and neoliberal because they have captured the entire thing. And that's why we have a neoliberalist world order that keeps on doing the same thing and we keep on getting into wars and all that stuff. But yes, that happens, especially in Africa. We're very well captured, especially with the World Trade Organization and all those things. It's very well captured. It always seems to help the elites. Whatever ideas that they have always seems to help the elites. But with that said, I do not think because it is film. This is the thing I want to always put out there. You should allow many people to speak as much as they can speak. I do not think it is a good first step because some of the issues he brings up is very specifically Nigerian. And the first audience, one of the good things about this movie, because as Iroko critic was saying, the first audience for this movie is Nigerian. The audience first is Nigerian. Yes, it's talking more than just Nigerian. It talks about because the masquerades and it says it's not only an African thing. And in that case, it is very, very right. That is actually a very radical thought because there's this Western idea that the Western don't have the spiritual, like indigenous thing, but it's a lie. They do have the spiritual indigenous cultures thing, the Gaelic, even Tor that we're talking about, actual Tor, those things, the Sami people, they do have an indigenous thing. All those things, they're also indigenous to their own spirit and their own space. And that is actually very radical. That one something, yes, is it organized by some Western, but that one thought is an actually very radical thought. Because there is this idea that the Westerners don't have that, but they do. They do have it. It's a lie. So it's a lie that they don't have it. And those people who real in the West will realize that they do have it, indigenous, like they realize they do have it, try to fight against it. Some of them are fascist white nonsense, but some of them try to fight against that thing because they also are are also victims of colonialism. The Irish are victims of colonialism. Hell, even Ukraine that we're talking about is also there. Some victims of colonialism and all those things. The Nazis literally wanted to colonize their land. That's why the Nazis did what the Nazis did in in World War II. So those things, colonialism is not just for brown people. Modern day, yes, the undercarrying of the modern day system, it is a colonialism of mostly brown people, yes. But it's not just for brown people. It's also the colonialism is undergirded mostly because of capitalism and because of elitism. That's what it is. And I don't necessarily think the thing I get what you're saying, but I just want you to just know that thing that it literally has, that thought of like, okay, the spiritualism and that thing, that is a very radical non-Western thought. To even include Europeans into it, to even say that you have that is actually very, very radical. It's very, very radical in a way that most people don't see. Like it's actually very radical. That's a very very radical thought. That's this is my anthropology talking. Yeah, that's a very radical thought. But yeah, I can see some of those Western like things that you're talking about. Those things that undergird academia and the Western academia ways of speaking. But I think that I wouldn't say there should be anybody else in the room. I would say that there should be more types of these movies made from more types of different perspectives that has many different ways of speaking. Because the more you have more types of speaking and give them all equal stars and shows in like lighting, it is better. That's what I would say. I, I I can see where you're coming from, and and you have a point, but I also want to like say that we should also acknowledge that there's a very radical thing that is on the gut that is also there.
All right.
Okay. It makes sense. Obviously, it does. But again, this is why I asked for somebody who is more knowledgeable to be in the room because then they can pinpoint where things are going, the way that you would approach decolonization in Africa, even though colonization as a word applies to a lot of experiences, the way that you approach decolonization in Africa, decolonization against with regards to black and brown bodies, is very different from the way that you would approach decolonization in the West, because the colonization that happened to people happened differently. Even within the continent, the colonization that happened to different African countries and different African peoples happened to them differently. So their decolonization approach would be very different. And that's sort of what I'm talking about when I'm asking for someone more knowledgeable, because then they have these contexts and they can provide guidance. That's all I needed. I'm all for like different voices. I just want whatever work that is being done to be competently done. And most of the time, especially in this particular case, someone being in the room to say, oh, why are you doing it this way when it makes more sense to do it this way? Why are you saying this when like you could just easily say this? Or this is a context that this approach is missing or glossing over. That's just have someone else in the room who actually knows. That's all.
Okay. I mean, I'm not sure what is what particularly is missing from. I mean, like I know we've spoken a bit about colonization. I mean, it's not particularly mentioned. I can see how one can take colonization from it, but because it isn't particularly mentioned, I don't give it put a lot of weighting on it, as well as like I don't think there's any need to. I'm only judging the film in terms of so what I felt it said, and the world it created, and the story told in that world it created. And in that world it created, there wasn't much need to explore anything else, anything else much beyond what it explored for me. Like it just, it's like, it feels rather simple for me. It's like, in this world, right? There's a reason why, like, people behaving poorly and badly is affecting the spirit world. That's the simple this thing. You can build larger structures onto why people are behaving badly, or what's causing people to behave badly, or whatever. But like, that's not really what the film is saying. And maybe if it worked, maybe if the film was made stronger by thinking about capitalism and colonialism and all of these things, and like it just fit perfectly with all of that. Yeah, maybe I can understand you like it's even more being elevated better. I'm just judging the film based on the story it said it was going to tell and the story that it told. And I feel like I understand, for the most part anyway, understand what it was trying to say. I don't feel particularly cheated or anything by that. But Mariah has come on. Mariah has very good on the video essays. She does a lot of stuff. I'm interested in hearing what she has to say. Go on, Mariah.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
So I'm sorry I came late, but I've just been listening to what's been said, and I think from the most recent part of the conversation about the philosophy of the film, in my mind, the film was not necessarily trying to be rooted in any specific idea, because it was attempting to just sort of point at a general social malaise. I do appreciate the idea that it was potentially focusing too much on African spirituality from a Western perspective, because when the professor was sort of explaining himself by the end, it did feel very much like he was giving a very Eurocentric explanation. But in my mind, that was for, how do I put this? It was for people who wanted clarification on what the film was about, because it was a strange film. It was for a lot of, I feel like for a lot of people, it was very ambiguous in many ways. Like there was so much, like, visually it's lovely, but like it's not got, if you're not already looking to be questioning what's going on, you might not say, what's the point? Like, what's the plot of this film? This man has been his body's been taken over. He doesn't even have a character arc. Like, the man's body's just being used, he dies. Like, there's no resolution, but that's the whole point. Like, the whole time you're supposed to be left with so many questions, because it's reflecting a world that is questioning its sickness. Like, the way you see the city is full of sickness, social sickness, physical sickness, and the spirit world is trying to come out and heal it, but there's so much interacting and forcing it to be repressed. Like, I thought the whole point was to provoke the questions and not give us an answer. The closest thing I can think of, maybe in parallels, is like maybe the Kabbalism of the Matrix, where it's clearly rooted in a religious system, and there's a religious system the whole series is based on. But if you go too deep in it, then it ruins the point the films are making, and it's running away from the inspiration that the first film starts on. And so just starting to ask certain questions is enough. And I think with this kind of film, I think with many films, I mean, most art that has any political commentary, it's not the art's job to give you an answer, but to raise the question itself, to inspire people to ask more questions. Because in 90 minutes, you can't write a thesis statement, you can't write a manifesto. You can say a lot of things, you can inspire people to draw their own conclusions, but you can't deliver a whole message, not one that's detailed enough with enough nuance.
Amazing. Yeah, actually, that I pretty much agree with everything you said there. I didn't actually say this because we started with Mel. One of my least favorite things was the end, and but I understood why that was put there. It's put there to like go, hey, right, like, I know this film was weird. In case you were wondering what this film was about, here it is in like 3 minutes or 2 minutes of like heavy-fisted sort of dialogue. Right, heavy-fisted, not a thing.
I don't know.
Okay,
Ham-fisted, yeah.
Heavy-fisted might be a different thing.
I feel like we're in a different club right now. This feels like a different club.
Yeah, I agree. I didn't like the ending. I didn't want him to die. I wanted to be a super, like, I actually wanted it to be like end happy, he saves things, but
Yeah.
no.
For me, that the image of it's only just that, like, it does tie in the sort of rebirth and like, hey, this isn't the end of the story of the battle between like the spirit. Like,
I know, but like the Okoroshi lives on, right? But
yes,
but Raymond's gone. Raymond, I liked Raymond. I liked the Okoroshi.
Yeah.
I liked Raymond.
Yeah, well, he's gone. But the for me, like, it's just that maybe that's actually probably too sudden. I don't know how he would. I don't know how he would have tied the death from the point when Okoroshi dies to the rebirth of the masquerade. Still, the new guy who wakes up and
to become the Okoroshi.
No, it's not even the Okoroshi. I think it's a different masquerade. It could be a different masquerade, different masquerade. But like, just like, it lives on. Like, this will keep on happening. People are still trying to live on. But I don't know how we would have tied it unless if they didn't do that bit. I'm sure there's some way to write it in. But like, yes, that last bit with the professor explaining, and I would say, right, in addition to right, Chiwetel Ejiofor basically says this, what the professor says. He just says it in his own way. Professor is more, hey, big words, and he's given an interview, in fairness, right, of somebody who's trying to understand this, right, and this is how he's done it, which honestly, as ham-fisted as things are, this isn't the worst at all, because like he's I think, I don't know whether he's writing a book or whatever, but he's being interviewed, and he's given it in the most let me break it down for you kind of thing. But like, we're not actually learning too many things new from what Chiwetel Ejiofor says. So like, we've already had our version, and when Chiwetel Ejiofor says his part, he says it exactly in the voice of the hey, we've been doing this all along. This is what has, and the corruption in man's world is what is causing like the decadence that we're seeing, all that kind of thing. It's already been in there. So I think that's very interesting, and I like that everybody Mel, you basically made this. I think this would have been like a 40-minute space, which wouldn't have been too much fun, because
I wouldn't have been hungry.
If 40-minute space would have been just one-sided, maybe just Otas, Vanessa, and I just going, yeah, this film is pretty great. This film is pretty great. I had some other issues. I think there was some sound issues.
But sound is always an issue.
Sound is always an issue.
How about we just never mention sound,
yes,
and then we let you know if the sound was okay?
We've already said this basically for Nollywood films. Like when the sound is good, when the sound is good, we'll tell you. If not, just assume.
Just assume.
It's not good. But yeah. Any last words from anyone?
I like the movie.
Yeah, all right. Okay. All right.
I didn't hate the movie.
Okay.
I didn't like it, but I didn't hate it.
Okay. Well, one thing about like again like I think I don't know how many times I've seen it, and it still feels like I am picking up something slightly new every time. It's quite a dense movie. Like there's a lot of things packed into it, and the more you watch it, I think the more it might make sense. But take care, everybody. Have a lovely one.
Bye.
Have a good one.
Bye,
we'll see you next time. Bye. Thanks for listening to the episode. If you enjoyed listening and would like to join live, just follow us on Twitter at Iroko Critic, and join us every Sunday 6 p.m. West African time on our spaces.